Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Fiction. My name is Melanie McNair. I'm the Senior Director of Public Programming here. How many of you are visiting us in person for the first time? Well, you are all welcome. Please sign up for our mailing list and find out about what else we do. We're going to have a huge literary party here on December 1st called our First Novel Fete. So if you're in town, please come. It'll be fun. Just a couple of quick housekeeping announcements, which is that if that the cafe is open and you can bring in food and drink here, and that we will have an audience Q&A. And if you're here, please raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you so that our audiences around the world can hear your question as well. And that's we have signed copies of the book, and so if you want to buy a copy afterwards, you can get it personalized. So this event is part of our International Library Series, and I'm going to introduce you to one of our partners, Leslie Ann from the Center for Art of Translation.
I don't usually get to be here in person. I'm usually just a giant head on the screen. So I'm very excited that my whole body is present for this event. Like Melanie said, I'm with the Center for the Art of Translation. We're a literary nonprofit based in San Francisco, California. If you're not familiar with our work, we champion literary translation and honor the work of translators. Our publications, events, and educational programming enrich the library of vital literary works, nurture and promote the work of translators, build audiences for literature and translation, and honor the incredible linguistic and cultural diversity of our schools and our world. You can find out more about what we do at catranslation.org. Now I'm going to turn it over to our third partner, the American Library in Paris, and Emily Biggs. I will translate. Just gonna double check this.
And there is someone in Paris? Yes, the American Library. It's called this event. Your French translation. My French publishers, I think they're about to disappear. So I think
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Skip to the yes. You know, technology. So Emily, we'll come back to you, and you can tell us about everything. And but we'll say hi to the people in Paris, and we'll welcome Claudia Norman, who's the founder of Celebrate Mexico Now, to introduce our panel.
Thank you so much to the Center of Fiction to invite us to partner on this important event, and everybody here. So this is our 5th time collaborating with the Center for Fiction, and first time doing an event in the afternoon and connecting to San Francisco and to Paris. Hello, hola, bonjour. So I'm going to introduce Jazmina Barrera. We are so proud to present Jazmina here. Jazmina's book has been published in 9 countries and translated to English, Dutch, Portuguese, Italian, and French. Her book, Cuerpo Extraño, Foreign Body, was awarded the Latin American Voice Prize by Literal Publishing on Allied Houses, was chosen for the Indie Next list by IndieBound. Línea Negra was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle, Great Barrios Book in Translation Prize, the National Book Critics Circle Autobiography Prize, Canyon's Book of the Year Award, and the Amazon Primera Novela First Novel Award. She's editor and co-founder of Ediciones Antílope, and she lives in Mexico City, and we are so proud to have Jazmina Barrera today. Christina MacSweeney has been recognized in a number of important awards, and her translation of Valeria Lucelli's The Short of My Teeth was awarded the Valle Inclán Translation Prize and also shortlisted for the Dublin Literary Award. Her most recent translation includes works by Daniel Saldaña Paris, Elvira Navarro, Verónica Gerber-Vixesi, Julian Herbert, and Carla Suarez. And Leanne Shapton is a Canadian author, artist, illustrator, art director, and editor based in New York City. She's the author of Swimming Studies, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award for Autobiography in 2012. Leanne also published a children's book in 1918 called Toys Talking. She has taught creative writing in the graduate degree program at Columbia University and Sarah Lawrence College. And Leanne is the art director at the New York Times op-ed page and co-founder of the non-for-profit art bio publisher JNL Book. And since 2021, she is the art editor at the New York Review of Books. So it's my pleasure to welcome in Jazmina, Christina, and Leanne to the stage. Enjoy the conversation.
On? Are they on? Do we have to do it? Okay. I think it's great. Christina, can you see us? Hi. Hi.
Hi. Yes, I can see.
Okay.
Hi everyone, this is so exciting.
Yeah, thanks for coming at 1:30 p.m.
Thanks for
Oh my goodness.
It's later over here.
Okay. Well, congratulations to the both of you on this book. I'm so happy to be asked to talk to the both of you today. Big fan of Jazmina and her work, and I think I've read a lot of your translations too, Christina. So I think the title of the talk today was Secrets, Shame, and Stitching.
Love that.
Something like that. And I mean, I want to get into all 3 of those things. I have, I mean, you'll be signing books after. I mean, I obviously want everybody here to, and everybody who might be tuning in to buy this book. It's, I don't know if I should be the one to describe it, but I found that it was this sort of portrait of 3 friends and portrait of friendship, and also in terms of art speak, this landscape of friendship and how the terrain of friendship goes. And I wondered if you saw it more as one or the other, but it's really beautiful, and then woven literally through the novel is this language of stitching and language of embroidery that the main character, part of a book that she is working on. That's how I took it anyway. And so many questions I want to ask that are both on the craft side and on the story side of both of you. I want to ask both of you. I guess, do you want to say anything in description to the book, to the live studio audience, or do you want me to get right into the...
I want to say thank you.
Oh,
I want to say thank you to you, Leanne. It's really such an honor. I am a big fan of Leanne's work. All of her the different aspects of her work.
Thank you.
And it's so good to see my dear Christina, even if it's on screen, and all of you in the Center for Fiction and Two Lines Press who've been so generous with me. Just that.
Okay, all right.
The moment.
Well, I mean, my first question, because there's this sort of book in the background of the novel, which is a book about embroidery, after reading this, I thought, did you do any work on a book about embroidery yourself?
Yes, so
Embroidery and women's silences, so a lot of history of embroidery and what it meant and what it stood for and codes and, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so my history with embroidery is similar to the narrators. My grandmother taught me to embroider when I was like 5, because I did these dolls, these fabric dolls, and I wanted to embroider, the eyes and the clothes. But then I didn't do much, of course, being 5. And at around 12 or 11 maybe, my computers teacher in the primary school I went to was also giving me a workshop on cross-stitch. So I learned a little bit more then. And then when I went to high school, I went with my friends to this small town outside of Mexico City in a state called Querétaro, to a Ñañú community where we were teaching adults to read and write, and they in turn taught us to do different kinds of embroidery, different stitches and motifs. And then me and my friends, we kept embroidering, and it became a custom for us as a group, but also for each individual. I continued doing it on and off my whole life. It is not something I do all the time, but every once in a while I make a gift for someone, or especially gifts. And when I was, this was like 7 years ago, maybe they invited me to Young Writers Congress in a place called San Luis Potosí, and I needed to write something for that, and I wrote this essay on the silence of women, embroidery, and stitching, and I really enjoyed writing it, and I thought it could be something else, but I didn't know how or what. And then when I was writing the story of these 3 friends, which at the beginning was very close to my own experience with my friends, I went to the archive of my documents and diaries, letters, the things I had from my adolescence, and going through that, I remembered how important embroidery had been for me and my friends.
Right.
And I remembered that essay. So I went back to the essay, and both things started to grow at the same time, like the essay and the novel.
The character of Mila, yeah.
Yes.
So you gave it to her to write.
Yes. That's it.
And so am I reading pieces in it that came from the original essay?
Some of them do. Yes. Not that many, because it was shorter.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
Christina, do you embroider or sew or crochet or knit?
I do. I'm a big craftswoman in all sorts of ways. And like Jazmina, I learned to embroider very early and in life. And I really took to it. And I used to design clothes and embroider them and sell them at one point and things like that. It was just something I loved. And I think one of the things I loved in the book was the very communal aspect of embroidery, which wasn't part of my experience, and suddenly it was so different. And
interesting.
I really enjoyed that side of it, thinking about that.
I want to know if you embroider.
Also, it's a real pleasure to be here, I have to say. I'm kind of to be in such great company.
Tell us about your vest. Is that embroidered?
This, I put it on specially, but it's not Mexican, it's from India, and I bought it about 30 years ago in Knoxfam shop, but I thought, yeah, I'm going to have it.
Claudia's wearing an embroidered piece too. I just watched Rosemary's Baby, and there's a scene where Rosemary, so she's sort of befriended the older couple next door, and Guy goes over there to basically sell his soul to the devil. Do you know the story of Rosemary's Baby?
I think so.
Anyway, and so there's this older couple who are Satan worshipers, and then Ruth Gordon plays one of them, and her friends come over, and they sort of invade Rosemary, who is Mia Farrow's space, and they just plunk down on her couches, and they whip their knitting out, and they just start talking and invading Rosemary's space, and she's just put on a record, and she's pissed off that they've barged in. But there really is it reminded me of the three friends sort of sitting in the halls at school or outside and just knitting and talking, and that it really is a space of thinking of conscious and subconscious and unconscious, of repetition. I mean, I don't embroider well. I sew a lot, and I don't knit or crochet, but I love sewing stuff together. Just like it's a little bit more like stitches than anything woven. Yeah. But such a great analogy for friend. I mean. Metaphor for friendship. I also wondered about the word embroider. When it's used, it's like if you embroider a story, you're kind of polishing it or making it up or prettifying or something like that. But it's something completely different, I feel, here, and it's more connective, and you really get a sense of these three friends through this. Through these sort of pieces sometimes of history about the craft and the practice of embroidery in different cultures or in different artists who use it to subvert systems. And I wondered, that's why I was asking about the kind of original source material of it, because, and this is sort of a craft question, it reminded me of the book by John McGregor, Reservoir 13, where he sort of talks about this disappearance of a child that happens to a community, and he talks about the migration of birds over the course of 13 years. And he said he wrote the natural history and the sort of biology of the birds, and then the story of the disappearance. And then he said when he went to interweave them, he didn't have to write connective tissue. It just, when you talk about connective tissue, it just worked. And I wondered if, and I got that sense of giving the reader spaciousness, because what Jazmina does in the book is sort of space these very different time periods and very different tones, one after another. And I think it works really well. But I wondered if there was that, again, that idea of like taking a piece of cloth here and a piece of cloth here and just, or did you have more of a plan? Or again, sort of, I feel like different writers do that weaving differently, and I wondered how you did it or approached it.
Oh, I love the idea of that book. I want to read it.
It's pretty
Sounds
fantastic.
Lovely. So I tried different methods, and I think I also like luck to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you will get two fragments together that you wouldn't have put together, but they work.
Like quilting.
Somehow. Yeah, like that, yeah, that's it, like quilting. Yeah. But I also, like in embroidery, I do make some plans. So, for example, here I had very clear which were the different timelines.
Yeah.
And what I do is, there's a lot of math involved in it.
Okay.
Like I assign a certain color, for example, to the different timelines.
Okay.
And then a different color to the essay fragments. And then I will try for there to be a harmonious interweaving of them. Mm-hmm. But then if there's a moment when I mean, according to the pattern, there should come another,
Right.
I don't know, red one, but they don't quite work. I don't mind putting a green
Blue
one
one
there,
would
a
be-
blue
yeah,
one
yeah.
there. So it's like a combination
interesting.
of something that is symmetric,
Yeah.
but also imperfect, like
Yeah.
embroidery sometimes
Yeah.
is.
I got the sense too, and as an embroiderer, I wonder, Christina, if you noticed this, that, I mean, when I think embroidery, I think of that circle, what's it called?
Oh, the bastidor, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
The embroidery frame, yeah?
Frame,
Yeah,
the frame,
the
yeah.
frame.
And so there were so many times in the book when I thought in those 4 different strains, you would just turned it. And you were stitching again like this, and then you turned it again the way that, you know,
Yeah.
or you did the way you have to because of physiology. You have to turn what you're looking at. It felt so good. I don't know if you noticed that when you were translating it, Christina.
In terms of translation, I was thinking about what Jazmina was saying about colours and having these colours, and my translations look like that.
Oh, yeah?
Things I feel kind of happy with, things I need to research more, things, that I know they're not right and I've got to work on them. And so my early translations are just like yours. They're full of colours, and I gradually work my way through them until they become black and white on the page.
Oh, wow. Monochrome.
Monochrome.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So back to a sort of a larger theme. I wondered if the characters of Mila, Dalia, and Citlali were based on real people, and how, if those real people were still in your life, how you not necessarily approached fictionalizing them. Well, yeah, how you approached fictionalizing them, and I feel like there should be a kind of a code of honor if you fictional, and it should just be kind of like an understood, I don't know, Geneva Convention, or like some code of friend convention, or someone in your life convention, where, because I've done it a lot and I've been fictionalized, and people go about it in very different ways. And so I wondered if you could talk about how you fictionalize people that you may or may not still have relationships with.
And I always try to get it right, and it never works. Like
You piss someone off, like you lose a
I'd
friendship.
love to have that code, like somebody just tell me what to do. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, this book started really close to my own experiences with friendship. And I think there are 2 friends who are closer to these characters, but they are also definitely not these friends. What happened was that I had all of these stories about friendship with different friends that I wanted to put into this book, but I couldn't have like 20 friends, so I just made these 3 characters. And then when I was doing that, and also changing a lot of details about the characters, because I didn't want them to be exactly like my friends, and then suddenly they were just like themselves. They weren't my friends anymore. They were these imaginary friends I had in my mind, and maybe what was happening to them was similar to what happened to us, but they reacted in a different way. They said different things. They liked different things, and I was doing all of that according to me, not to hurt these friends, but they got angry anyway. And
But at what point did they get angry? Did you say?
So I finished the manuscript, and then I sent it to them, asking them what they thought, if they would like me to change anything. This is like the first time I'm telling this story. Like, you should be a therapist. So I sent this to them, and they stopped talking to me. No. And then I didn't know what to do, because I was like, well, should I publish this or not? I mean, they're clearly angry, but I don't know why, so what should I change? Yeah. And I did change many things after that.
But they didn't explicitly say what they wanted to be changed.
No. No, they didn't say anything.
Yeah. Oh, babe, I'm sorry.
So then that's it. I thought like, well, this isn't okay. So I changed a lot of things, and I published it. And one of them has spoken to me afterwards and said like, this maybe it was too hard for me back then, but we're okay. It's gonna be okay, and we're fine now. The other one, I don't think she'll ever speak to me again.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah.
But I've come to terms with it. And this is a book about losing friendships.
Yeah.
And coming
backward.
Maybe.
Backward,
and,
yeah.
Or maybe not.
Yeah.
Accepting that just as part of the process.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where I'm
In that
at.
way, it's so good because it doesn't perfectly resolve. Like you really do lose the threads of people's lives as you. I kept on seeing that horrible thing when you make a mistake and you have to when you have to undo, and just that bubbling, horrible, like messy part where you're just like, oh, like. But you do get a fresh start.
Jazmina, I'm thinking as you said that, I know when I was translating, there were a couple of places where I thought, I said that to you. I think, hang on, that's me.
Oh my gosh.
Like sitting on his hands.
Yeah, sometimes there are cases where people recognize themselves in characters that are not based on them at all in any way, but it's almost like the telltale heart, or like the what's the Hamlet thing, like the plays the thing that'll whatever, and someone admits what a horrible person they are without knowing it, or something like that. Anyway,
and it also happens that, I mean, I've had a couple of friends who recognized themselves in some of these stories, and they loved it. They were so happy about it. Yeah, so it's a very different reaction each time. You cannot never. I mean, there's people who get angry because they are not in the book. Like, so you. Yeah. It's very difficult.
It's so hard. I mean, I often think that there should be it would be interesting to read an anthology of the letters that writers write to people, either informing them that they're going to be fictionalized or apologizing. I mean, they're out there. It's always, I've heard a friend of mine once said she got an email from a writer who said, you might recognize a character kind of like you in this. And this other writer friend said it was so interesting the way, because you don't want to give up any of your work. You still want to maintain a relationship and friendship, but how do you, almost in a lawyerly way, go, you can't touch my art, like you just like, and so it was just interesting the sort of motivation behind the sort of email that you sent, or anyway, it's fascinating. I think the code should be, you say, by the way, I love you, and I'm basing some of the qualities of this one character on some of our interactions, and then don't ask permission, because you're not really asking permission. You can't give that much agency away, but I do think there's a thing, and it's recognized because everyone who does it knows how important it is to have the, freedom to write. Anyway.
Yes.
It's so tricky. I'm sorry that,
It's okay. It happens.
Yeah. Okay, now the secret part. Now we've
talked about
shame a little bit. The secret part of the book. I wondered if there was ever a point, and I hope I don't spoil anything, but there's a character where child abuse is implied, and I wondered if there were any point at which you wanted to be more explicit about that.
Yes, I thought about it.
Yeah.
But then, again, in the real story, where I've had friends who I think have been through stuff like that.
Yeah.
The thing was that I didn't know for sure.
Right.
And I wanted to have that uncertainty in the book too, because that is also an important part of what I wanted to
Intimacy,
explore
yeah.
in translation. This fact that you can know a person very well, be even as close as these friends are in this story, and still there is a whole world you don't know about them, and there is a part of that world that you cannot access if they won't let you.
If they won't let you, yeah.
And there are many times when you really don't know, and maybe you will never know, and that is very frustrating.
Yeah,
But I wanted to explore that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if I had like an omniscient narrator who knew what things were. But
It was also great the way the two friends had a little bit differing levels of intel about what might have happened.
Yes.
Too. But I wondered about that because I do think notions of our collective ideas around shame change over generations, and this idea of silence and embroidery, which are part of the narrator's story, it's sort of like the language that the illiterate woman created through embroidery, or there's just sort of the unspoken through all these things, and it just, and different things to be ashamed of. It's sort of, there's a question I like to ask everybody, or writers, or and I'll ask you too, and you too, Christina, but just this idea of, shame used to be about the homosexual uncle or the unmarried daughter, or there used to be there's these shames that you kind of point to in time periods. Not that those things are still, people find shame in those, but I wondered I think I asked a writer once, what's our shame du jour? Like, what is the shame that we have where our kids will be like, what were you even thinking? And this one writer said, maternal ambivalence. But I wondered if you ever thought about what language will emerge, or what things that we're ashamed about now. We might not be, not child abuse, obviously we should always be ashamed of that.
Yes,
but what might be easier to talk about, or I don't know, I just dream that people will say things when, and it's such an interesting thing when a friend admits to being abused. Like it's such a, anyway, I was just interested in that version of Citlali's shame. Yeah.
Yeah. Christina, do you have any idea?
Is the shame Citlali's, or is the shame? I mean, Citlali to me is a person who is traumatized in some way.
Yes.
Or she's got a trauma that she has never quite found a way to deal with, and maybe one that she doesn't want to share. I mean, I'm not sure if shame is the right word for her. I don't feel she's a shameful person somehow.
Or secret? Do you think she kept that? Does that fall into the secret?
Maybe she doesn't understand herself, and that's
what
the
happened.
Problem. Yeah, that if she can't work things out in her mind. Yeah, and there's the kind of like the speculation on the part of Dalia and Mila, I think, is, they don't know either, do they, Jazmina? They don't really know, and they speculate, and, sort of, I think Mila is kind of more concerned than Dalia, who seems to take it all a little bit more in her stride.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if it's shame that Citlali feels.
Maybe you're right.
Incomprehension.
Yeah, maybe also a little bit of shame. I mean, that happens with your parents, right? Like when your parents do something wrong, or act in a way we don't admire or appreciate, it is sometimes the children who take on the shame, I would say.
Right.
So maybe there's a little bit of both. And it's such an interesting question, the one you did, Leanne. I don't know, I have so many examples.
I mean, the goal would be for there to be no shame around a victim of child abuse or something like that.
Yes.
But,
and it is a thing that is changing so fast in our culture.
Yeah.
I mean, when I published Línea Negra, I had at least a couple of mails, I have to say, of men saying, "How could you write about your childbirth? That is so embarrassing." Like, weren't you ashamed to write about your childbirth? That, and I mean, there's so many things for men who are not ashamed to talk about masturbating or defecating, but childbirth, it seems like
men might be ashamed to talk about penises that something's wrong with them.
Yes.
Like a dysfunctional penis.
Yes,
I feel like that Gary Steingart essay in the New Yorker where he talks about his penis, it was breakthrough. I was just like, more of that, please.
Definitely.
But wow, so it was men saying that.
It was men saying that.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that I think have changed in the last few years. For me, at least, I remember I once was in like many years ago, I was in something like an extramarital relationship with someone. And I was so ashamed of that. And it is until very recently that I am able to talk about that without being absolutely terrified.
Right. Terrified of judgment? Or,
yes.
Right, okay.
And with guilt, with shame.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Even though that,
Yeah.
Yes, but that.
Well, with Línea Negra too, one of the reasons I think it had such a great response, you translated that too, Christina, so good, was that it not that it was about maternal ambivalence, but it was just another voice talking about the realities of it and adjacent to a certain kind of maternal ambivalence toward all of the prepackaged kind of ways of being a mother and giving birth and being pregnant. Buy that one too, everyone. All the men, buy that one. Let's see. I feel like we've got a few more minutes. Secrets and shame and embroidery. I want to talk about the relationship between translation and I guess my question to the two of you, in that you've worked, together before, is if embroidery is it's sort of a nonverbal communication, it's a nonverbal way of spending time. Is there anything about translation and the way that you two work together in particular? I imagine some translators don't ever speak to the writer and some work really closely, but is there ever, which is a very verbal relationship, but is there anything about your relationship and process that is nonverbal, is more to do with pictures or music or anything? I'm kind of fascinated by translation.
I think I'm very visual, so for me, yes. I mean, there's whole parts that you talk about translation being, sort of a written thing, but there's whole parts that I have to have visualized in my head before I can actually get them onto the paper, if you see what I mean.
No, explain. Go into that, yeah. Like a scene or?
Yeah, it's a kind of, I think when I'm reading, I'm often reading aloud in my head, just when I'm reading. And that kind of idea of the music of what you're reading kind of can work into a visual thing as well. And until I've got that whole thing together, then I can't really put it down on paper. But that sounds crazy.
No, it sounds right. That's interesting. So the tone in one language then becomes how you get into the tone of the other language.
Yeah, like we were talking
There's
about.
That beautiful thing, isn't there, Jazmina? Is it the Chinese type of embroidery writing where the women created their own language? I mean, that's so gorgeous, isn't it?
The Nushu. But yeah, I remember that we were recently talking about this book that Christina is going to translate, where Elena Garro, the Mexican writer, is, well, I talk about her and also about his husband for a while, Octavio Paz. And Christina was saying, like, I need to read Octavio Paz's poems to get into the tone of his voice, like to understand his, which I loved. I also want to, I want to clarify, I couldn't take this out of my mind.
Yeah.
I didn't have an extramarital relationship. I'm happily married. I just thought that wasn't the term, the correct term. I love my husband.
Yeah, right.
I would never cheat on him. Like, it's amazing. This was like 20 years ago.
The other person was extramarital.
Yes, the other person was married. Yeah, that's it. I need to clarify that, please.
I was just formulating all sorts of questions.
Yes, so many.
Okay.
No.
Clarify.
That's it. Yeah. Yes. This is online also, so no.
Oh my gosh.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah, for Alejandro. Noted. Please. There's something else about the translation I wanted to ask. Oh yeah, what other languages do you translate, Christina?
I just translate from Spanish. I speak German, French, a smattering of Italian, and years back Latin. But for me as well, kind of, because mostly I translate from Latin American writers, a lot in Mexico. And I think part of it is to have an understanding of the literary culture, the society. So I wouldn't really feel happy kind of trying to translate from literary cultures that I don't know much about.
Right.
So, yeah.
And Jazmina is a publisher too. Is there anything that you are dying to translate that you've hasn't been?
I'm finishing translating a book by Amina Kain, a small book called The Horse at Night. And it was but it's not for Ediciones Antílope, it's for an Argentinian publishing house that asked me to translate that. And this is the first book I translate by myself, because the two previous ones I translated with Alejandro. And I love the exercise, and this has been a joy to translate, but it's also a book that is filled with quotations. And it has been a nightmare. Like, I haven't really a new appreciation for translators, because just having to find those quotations is like a needle in a...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so difficult.
The worst, Jazmina, is when the occasional author makes up the quotation.
And attributes it to somebody who
never really existed.
Oh my gosh. So you're fact checking and translating.
Yeah. It's hard.
And is there anything you're publishing with your editions that you want to...
Ediciones Antílope?
Yeah. Ediciones Antílope.
So, let me think. We're going to publish this, I think, next year, a poetry book by a Guatemalan writer called Alay de Fopa, who was disappeared when she was looking for her disappeared son in Guatemala. And there is this manuscript that a friend of ours, she was working in this archive looking for something else, and she found this unpublished manuscript by her, and it's so beautiful. It's
When did
amazing.
she disappear?
More than 20 years ago, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
yeah, it's exciting, and that is our new book.
What are you working on, Christina, next?
Right now, I've just finished translating, Jazmina, there's a really beautiful book by Mexican writer Cleo Mendoza, which is going to be published in February. It's called Fury, and I have to say, read it because it's stunning. And yeah, I'm working on a couple of pieces by Daniel Saldana Paris. And I'm hoping to be working with Jazmina again in relation to Elena Garro, that's a real joy, a dream come true.
Yeah.
Okay, it's about time to open it up to the audience for questions. Claudia.
I just want to say, Christina, my name is Claudia Norman. Is on?
I'm sorry, I can't hear very well.
We're getting the mic
Hello?
to work.
Yes? All right. Christina, my name is Claudia Norman. And I just want to say that, Jazmina, you have,
So that she can see you?
Great. You have, Jazmina, you have created like the three friends that we all have, and you describe the atmosphere that we all have in Mexico City in a very specific way. But I read the book in English. So Christina, I just want to say that for me it was incredible that you were able to translate those nuances that are like, there are feelings that you smells, sounds, vibrations. And I just want to say that you were able to translate that I was able to read it because, and they are there on this book, because I live what Jazmina lived through her book. And as I said, those three friends, we all have those three friends. We will have those trips to alfabetizar, para ir a alfabetizar. So we have those experiences. But thank you, Christina, for putting it on like giving the chance to others to learn about that very specific experience and that nuance that is so difficult, but it's a cultural thing that is so difficult to explain to us. But thank you, it's a comment, just want to say thank you.
I loved how grumpy Dahlia was. She's really grumpy. We all have grumpy friends.
I'm afraid I didn't catch the name of the questioner there, but
Claudia.
Claudia, thank you. And I gave a lot of thought to this book, but also I spent a lot of time in Mexico. A lot of those nuances are things that are part of my experience of Mexico. But yeah, I mean, it means a lot to me that you would say this. It really does. So I'm quite moved by that. Thank you.
Hello, it's such a pleasure to see you, Jazmina and Leanne together. Kind of a dream team here on stage and joining us remotely. Because I know both of your work, there are a lot of artists, there's a lot of art in this work. And I was wondering if Leanne, you could speak to some of maybe the moments of art history or art making that kind of spoke to you and your practice. And Jazmina, are there certain things that you discovered in writing this book that I mean you have put this in the book, but are there one or two that were especially exciting to discover in your own research?
Well, yeah, I mean, all of these little guys were parts I called out. I didn't even talk about half of them today, but I did really enjoy, again, that sort of source material of the narrator's book, and how Jazmina wrote in these ideas of Louise Bourgeois and sewing and trauma, and how she used embroidery and stitching, and again how in the sort of art historical citations or parts of the book, you did get a sense of what the three friends were embroidering. Like Citlali was doing spiders, and so that made me think of, really gave her, it's funny because she didn't have as much art history as Mila? Yeah. But she felt more kind of goth, and like she was tapping into those bourgeois themes. The sort of, now I'm forgetting who the artists were, but the feminist subversive artists, the
Tracy Amin.
yeah, Tracy Emin, and there were two others in that section. I loved all those parts, and I thought again that you could see them as historical, but they illustrated the three characters really, really well, and obliquely. It didn't. Jazmina never spells out those parts, but by giving us a little window into this history, you get these friends at a certain point of their lives, when they're reading everything, they have the really, either the crappy teachers or the good teachers or the abusive teachers who influence them. And so all of those, I feel like when you are a student, everything, you're just this sponge and you're taking in so much art often if you're going to these museums. And so that, in terms of character development, really worked beautifully without being, this was what they were looking at or reading. Just this extra, there was the time when they're in the museums and they're looking at these things, but then this extra little current, obliquely illustrating their personalities was great.
Yeah. So there were so many passages that I loved. And I was thinking about what Leanne was saying, because I really wanted to make this. I at some point thought about naming the book The Shadow, which in English would be sampler, I think. And they are these fabrics that women make where they copy motifs or different kinds of stitches that they will later use to embroider something else. So these are like tools for memory, but they are beautiful fabrics that look like collage, because they have very different kinds of embroideries. And this is something that the characters are making also, like the collections of embroidery. And I wanted the book to be something like a sampler of all the different possibilities of embroidery, which are a whole universe. I was so surprised by that. The more I researched, the more I found out how embroidery connected to medicine, to art, to feminism, to literature, to technology, to so many different things. And just what Leanne was saying, that they relate in different ways to the kinds of embroidery that the characters do. I also wanted to talk about that, how embroidery is a way of, it's a kind of text, or can be a text, but it's also visual, and it's also, it has texture. And I think what was the most beautiful realization for me is that when we do something like embroidery, even if we don't know it, and this is sort of mystical, but we are connecting ourselves with so many women in so many communities, in so many different times, eras and geographies. And that is unbelievable, that we are doing a cross-stitching. We don't know that this comes from Egypt. I think that was like my favorite thing too.
And we have time for one more question.
Hello, thank you. This has been really wonderful. We've spoken a lot about how the book is about friendship, but something I really appreciate about this book is it's also about reflecting upon friendship from a later time. So, Mila at the beginning of the book is looking back on this friendship. And so I was curious if you can speak about kind of growing up, or the tension between, the power of friendship and needing to prioritize something else, or choosing to prioritize something else as you grow older.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons why I felt like I needed to write this book. It's because I feel bad, because there are a couple of people who have been to the other events and they have all heard this, so I'm sorry, including you, Chad, who asked the question. So I am an only child, and when I was really young, I remember thinking that I needed to really take care of my friends because otherwise I would die alone. And I remember thinking of myself as an old woman, not with my family, but with my friends, like living with my friends. And I was really good at keeping friendships for a long time. Like I really kept in touch with the girl who left in 2nd grade and you would never see again. I was still her friend.
Oh my God.
But then there comes a moment when you don't have the time or the space anymore for so many friends, and also they start living other places or just very far away in the city, and now you have responsibilities and work and family and a son. And especially when I became a mother, I didn't have time for friendships anymore. Like I had a very small amount of time, and sometimes I even needed to choose, like, what friend can I see this month? I don't know. Yeah. And that was the moment I decided to write this novel, and just to spend some time honoring these friendships I'd had, and coming to terms with myself with the idea that maybe they don't all have to be in your life for you to care about them and appreciate them and wish them the best. I think that this novel was part of that process.
There's a lot of love, and it's true, like your friends really do make you, like the one thing I want for my kid is that she has good friends.
Yes.
Because, I mean, that's so important. Like the bad friends, they can wreck so much.
Yes. And that is also something you realize at one point. Like you can choose who your friends are.
You can choose your friends.
And it's important.
Be discerning, because
yes.
But good friends are so good, and bad friends are so bad. And there's so much love in this book, I found too.
Yeah, and I'm terrible at making new friends nowadays. Like I have the 10 friends I love and really need and care about, and I will write to them every couple of weeks. But then the new friends is like, well, I would have loved for you to be my friend, but I guess that's not going to happen.
The door is shut.
Yeah.
The gate's down.
I also thought recently, I was actually writing something about this, and I thought maybe that could be a good reason to write books, to offer to the people you would have liked to have as friends, the gossip, the ideas,
and you find friends through work too. I mean, through one's work, which is bonding. Yeah.
You make friends by mistake sometimes too.
Yeah. Or lose friends by mistake. Christina, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about those friendships that somehow come about without you ever even thinking they might be there. I mean, sort of in strange situations. I was, a year or so ago, I was like a member of a committee, which is something I intend never to repeat in my life. But suddenly, because we were kind of stuck in it together throughout COVID and things like that, I became really close friends with one other member of the committee, and it was so surprising and so lovely. And friendship just hits you that way sometimes.
Someone once said, think about how often you fall in love, and that's how often sometimes you meet a friend. Like, because you can make friends and this and that, but a true friend, it probably happens with the frequency at which you might fall in love, which makes that...
It's beautiful.
Right? Yeah. It really, you don't feel so bad about all the crushes you have. But anyway, I think that's time.
Let's give them all a big hand.
Bye, Christina.